everybody. I'm Steve Paikin, and here we go again. A federal election debate among the four leaders of Canada's major political parties. And let's start tonight by introducing them. The leader of the Conservative Party, Stephen Harper. Right beside him, Jack Layton, the leader of the New Democratic Party. The leader of the Liberal Party is Michael Ignatieff, and the leader of the Bloc Québécois is Gilles Duceppe. We now move on to question two, and this one's about Canada on the world stage. Mr. Ignatieff, you get the first chance to respond to this. Mr. Layton, you're getting the second chance to respond. So this is the one-on-one between the two of you. And here is our questioner from Mississauga. Roll tape, please.
My name is Basalka Amelko from Mississauga. I would like to know, what is your vision for Canada on the world stage? Do you believe that our country should have a more prominent and active role internationally? If so, what will you, if elected Prime Minister, do to regain Canada's positive influence on the international arena?
Open up the discussion now to all four of you. Mr. Harper, do you want your first kick?
Let me talk about some of the things Canada is doing in the world. Obviously, the training mission in Afghanistan is going to be very important to build on the sacrifice that our brave men and women in uniform have made. We have the largest per capita mission to Haiti, an important country that needs our help. Canada right now, myself and President Kikwete of Tanzania are chairing the World Health Organization's panel on child and maternal health, where we're getting billions of dollars invested towards helping the health of the most needy people on this planet. We have Canadians leading a mission, United Nations mission in Libya. We have climate change, the Copenhagen Accord. Canada was a lone voice for a long time saying all emitters had to be included in a climate change pact. Now we have one that's moving in that direction. So I think on issue after issue, Canada's engaged, Canada's contributing, and this should not be a matter of partisan debate. All parties should support a strong role for Canada in the world.
Monsieur Duceppe.
I would say that government foreign policy is a copy of the Bush administration foreign policy. And Quebec cannot recognize itself with that kind of foreign policy. In the past, we had the list of person foreign policy, and I think it corresponded to the principles of the Quebec society and the values of the Quebec society. But when I look at the kind of foreign policy you're developing, and it has links with the people, your organization, your financing are stopped, I should say, financing like chaos and rights and democracy, because they're not corresponding to your straight, narrow ideology. Could you realize that that kind of foreign policy is a shame to the Canadian history?
What we're doing on foreign policy, on things like child and maternal health, are making sure that foreign aid dollars go to actual services to poor people in the world, not just to talk, not just to conferences. That's why we're making changes to foreign aid, to make it more effective. But when you talk about our values and Quebecers' values, Mr. Duceppe, let me just say this. Right now in Libya, we have an international force protecting a civilian population from atrocities. That's being commanded by a Canadian, General Charles Bouchard. I met with his father in Saguenay. They are as good Quebecers as you are, Mr. Duceppe.
Mr. Ignatieff. Quebecers, remember, you wanted to go in Iraq, and Mr. Ignatieff was supporting that also. That we do remember.
The fact remains, Mr. Harper, you're the first Prime Minister in the history of Canada to lose the seat that we were eligible to occupy on the Security Council of the United Nations. You spent, on the G20 summit, we had an opportunity to lead. You spent $1 billion in 72 hours, and there isn't a person in Canada who can remember a substantive outcome from that summit. And talking about Kairos, talking about aid agencies who work in Africa, you've muzzled them, you've shut them down. Anything you can't control, you want to shut down. That's no way to build international prestige overseas. These church organizations had worked in Africa for 30 years with support from the Canadian government, and for ideological reasons you shut them down. When Rights and Democracy, an independent organization trying to represent human rights around the world, gave you a little trouble, you basically destroyed the organization. So you can't lead in this country if you show so little respect for democracy. You've got to let different voices flourish in foreign affairs.
Mr. Ignatieff, I just recently was at an international meeting of Canadian international NGOs dealing with foreign aid. That's what the government of Canada does. But let me talk a minute about the G8 and G20, because it has come up time and time again. We're in a global economy. A recession came to this country through no fault of our own because of forces in the global economy. The G8 and the G20 have been vital vital to respond to a global response to the crisis, to ensure we first didn't have a Great Depression, and now that we are coming out through a recovery. We set important goals in that summit, including deficit and debt reduction targets for the world that Canada will achieve well ahead of time. So, you know, in this day and age where you're in a global economy, you have to be part of global conferences, and you have to be leading those conferences. And frankly, the world thinks Canada is the country leading global recovery.
But the world is also asking, what happened to Canada? Why is it now that the government there is being cited with contempt? Why is it now being known as a government that is so secretive and won't allow information out for its citizens? Why can't we even have open debates about foreign policy issues instead of having groups and organizations like Kairos, Rights and Democracy, we could go through the list, being shut down? Yours is the most closed administration when it comes to discussing these issues that we've seen in some time. But let me ask you simply this. Will you support my suggestion that we meet and arrange with the Auditor General for that report on the funds for the G8, G20 to be released now that it's already been leaked in various versions? Let's have her final report released. Will you go along with that?
Well, I'd be absolutely happy to see the real report. Mr. Layton,
well, then bring it out.
Bring it out.
Well, first
release
of all,
it.
It's the Auditor General's report.
What are you afraid of?
It's not the government.
What are you waiting for?
This is the Auditor General's report. We encourage the Auditor General to release that report. We obviously don't like to see documents floating around. The Auditor General herself says cannot be relied on.
Well, it looks like it takes a national debate to get a government document out of
Mr. Layton, you said
from Mr. Harper.
Mr. Layton, you said how the world was looking at this situation right now. What the world is looking at right now and is saying, Canada's got the strongest recovery of any country on earth, and suddenly it's plunged into a fourth election in 7 years, and Canadians don't know why. Canadians don't know why we're doing this, but I tell you what we do have to do. We have to get Parliament back to work, focused on the economy, passing the good measures for people that were in our budget, that we can afford without raising your taxes. That's what the country has to do.
Canadians know exactly why we're having an election, Mr. Harper. We're having an election because you didn't tell Parliament the truth about your budget costs, about any of the numbers. They became unbelievable. The Parliament of Canada could not have confidence in anything you said, including on international aid. Minister Oda inserted a knot into a document, falsified a document, misled the House of Commons, and eventually the confidence of the whole Parliament was lost. That's why we're having an election, because you didn't tell Canadians the truth, because you abused democracy. That's why we're having an election.
That's simply not correct. You know, the numbers in our budget have been verified by private sector experts. They've not been challenged. These numbers are accurate. We're having an election because the other three political parties saw an opportunity to go after the government. That's fine. I don't think Canadians agree. I think Canadians think we should not be focused on parliamentary squabbling, on censure motions, and these sorts of things. We should be focused on the economy. That's what we're doing. We've got good things in the budget to help pensioners, to help families, to help unemployed workers, to help our manufacturing sector. These are the things that Parliament should be dealing with and passing.
Monsieur Duceppe. Gentlemen, got to be fair with the time. Mr. Ignatieff.
The original question was about your vision of Canada in the world. You have failed to win a seat on the Security Council. You achieved nothing at the G8, G20. You shut down every independent organization that's trying to do good in Africa or Asia if it disagrees with your ideology. If we're going to have a foreign policy, it's got to be based on democratic values. Respect for Canadians when they go overseas, respect for what they're trying to do, not trying to muzzle people, shut people down. Let some flowers bloom here. Let democracy breathe. Let it live. If you're going to promote it abroad, as we should, you've got to respect it at home. You're a man who will shut down anything you cannot control. That's the core of your vision of government. And it's inimical. It's hostile to the values of democracy upon which this country is based.
Well, Mr. Ignatieff, this is simply not true. Canada is one of the most forceful promoters of freedom, democracy, human rights, the rule of law at home and abroad. When it comes to our foreign aid is delivered largely through private organizations and international partners. That's largely how we do it.
And we work
with other people. The idea that we're shutting them down or muzzling, this is just simply not based on any fact. Canada, as I say right now, the important initiative we have right now on child and maternal health, we've attracted billions of dollars to deal with the health problems of the most vulnerable people on the planet, and we have all other countries, international organizations working with us. That's the kind of thing Canada is really doing in the world Well, in Parliament, all we have is this kind of mudslinging, accusations, bickering back and forth. We're out there actually making a difference in the world. That's what Canadians expect of us.
Gentlemen, you want last 20 seconds on that?
Yes.
20 seconds.
I look at the Foreign Affairs Department budget in 2008-2009, $6 billion. 2009-2010, $14 billion. What's the explanation?
I'm not sure what figures you're quoting, Mr. Duceppe. I can tell you this, that Canada was the first country to fulfill its commitment to double its aid to Africa, to double its foreign aid, and we have made sure during this recession that we have not reduced foreign aid, but we are making the decisions.
But you're wrong with that explanation.
To make that foreign aid more effective.
The explanation is the $6.6 billion check to GM in Detroit.
Okay, gentlemen, that brings to a conclusion this segment. We now go on to question 3.